Hi, this is Ryan Berger of Old School Gamer Magazine, hanging out with the gang of the Bamsters, talking about our magazine, talking about what we used to do back in the day, playing video games with controllers that didn't have 15 buttons, and we like talking about video games and everything retro.
And hey everybody, yeah, we're back again, and this time it is the first interview of the year. Yes, we haven't forgotten those. This time it's a little bit special one. Normally we have a lot of game developers on, but this time we're going to talk a little bit more about the games themselves and a little bit older ones as well. But as always, hi, I'm G, and with me is Draconis.
Hey folks, coming at you from Southern California. It's getting a little frigid out here for me anyway. But Old School Gamer Magazine. This is something G just pointed out to me recently. I've been going through some of the articles on their website, and we've got Ryan here with us today to talk a little bit more about what they do. Ryan, say hi.
Hello. So a little bit frigid out there. It is 20 degrees out here, and there is snow on the ground. Southern California, come on. What do you got going on there?
See, I lived in Alaska for about 7 years, and I moved down here to get away from the cold, and I did that almost 20 years ago now. I've acclimated to the weather here, so it gets to be about 55 degrees, and I'm pretty chilly.
That's about when I take my shorts off and start putting on long pants. So I'm actually coming your way in about a week or so, which will be a couple weeks after this goes. So I'm going to be able to see Southern California, maybe even be able to hang with you a little bit while we're down there.
Yeah, that'll be funny. You'll probably be enjoying the weather in like shorts and a t-shirt, and I'll have a sweater on.
Yeah, understood completely. So, yeah, my name's Ryan Berger. I'm the publisher of Old School Gamer Magazine. We've been around for about a year. We're a print and digital magazine, and then we're highly involved in some of the cons that are there, like Retro City Fest is why I'm going to be meeting up with one of you guys at. We're having fun. It's a hobby magazine that I'm trying to make into a nice business, and I guess ask away on questions. What all do you think your listeners want to know about what we're doing?
Well, I'm going to start it off with a little bit. When we say old school gamer, right? What are we talking about? Because I can trace my lineage back to first generation consoles in the 70s.
Well, let's see. The best way to describe it would be the 70s through probably the mid 90s, so 20 plus years old. An older ballpark, back in the cartridge era, maybe touching on a little bit of PS1, a lot of Atari, a lot of Nintendo, a lot of Pac-Man, 1 megahertz, 3 megahertz speed kind of stuff. Centipede, arcade games, a little bit of pinball.
Ooh, I do like me some pinball. I haven't played actual pinball machines in probably a couple of decades now.
And some of the best ones are probably from the mid-90s, but I mean, even the modern ones, we're starting to get some coverage on some of the modern ones because pinball by its nature is kind of a retro format in the way it does things. But yeah, I mean, covering everything from the programmers, the people that make the games, the high score people, the whole culture of when we were kids, when we used to hang out at the mall, when we used to go, in my case, to the Fun Factory and pop quarters and Chuck E. Cheese back when they had actual video games there, not just ticket games. That's what we want to cover with Old School Gamer.
As somebody from Europe, that's where I kind of get that Americana vibe, because for us, the arcade machines were literally down at the local fast food joint, and that was it. We didn't have malls and arcades. There was a couple of machines down there. You popped in a few coins and played, and that was it.
Well, I mean, we had them everywhere. Sort of like if you ever go to Las Vegas, you see gambling machines everywhere. Well, that's what it was like back for us. And we had them at the pizza. We had them at the gas stations. We had them down the street. Now, a lot of us that are in our 30s, 40s, and 50s are putting these things in our basements. We're playing with Atari flashbacks. We're getting these arcade one-up machines. We're reliving our glory days. Now that we have money and don't just have our allowance, we actually have a real job.
Oh man, that was a dream back then, wasn't it? Having your own arcade machines.
And the thing is, now I've got about a half a dozen of them at my house. I love it. So, and across the street from my office, I can almost see it from here, is an arcade where you pay $10, $15 and play all you want. I mean, it's really something I'm thoroughly enjoying. I mean, going to all these cons like the SoCal Retro City Festival, one I'm going to a week from now, and meeting up with you guys at. I mean, it's just an absolute exciting environment to relive our childhood.
So,
sorry, Drac, go ahead.
Well, okay, so you mentioned that. Talk a little bit more about that. What exactly, what's the makeup of the events? What kind of presents do you guys have there?
these events, and there's probably 20 or 30 of them across the country. We're involved about half of them, are anywhere from 1,000 to 10,000 people in a big expo hall with exhibitors selling old cartridges, new games, with people that played back in the Nintendo World Championship, for instance, in the case of this Retro City Festival being there. Billy Mitchell, if you know of him from his Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, and all that kind of stuff. Walter Day is coming along with me from Iowa, from the Twin Galaxies gang. So there'll be a lot of competitive gaming. There'll be a lot of exhibits and stuff you can buy, stuff that grandma or mom probably threw away when you moved out of the house, and have a lot of fun with stuff. So I mean, if you haven't been to one yet, it's just a fantastic thing to go to. And if you check out our site, we have a list of all kinds of different ones that we're involved in, but really just do some searching. These cons are almost everywhere. There's, for instance, 2 or 3 of them just in Los Angeles.
Oh, wow. It seems like every time I turn around, I keep learning about new things like this that have been going on for so long, but somehow have just been under the radar for me.
Yeah, I think when I mentioned to, via email a couple weeks ago, it's like, yeah, you mean there's one right up in LA from? There's probably a smaller one in San Diego, but I mean they're an absolute blast, and you're gonna have fun with us, no doubt about it.
That sounds great. So you mentioned that you're in Iowa. Is the team that makes up the contributors to all the articles and stuff? Are you guys all based out of Iowa, or are you around from different places?
We're from just about everywhere. I mean, here in town, in my little city of Grimes, Iowa, which is just outside Des Moines, it's me and my kids that are running this. Me and my boys. I've got a 17-year-old boy and a 20-year-old boy that help me run it. And my 23-year-old daughter helps out at some of the shows. And you'll see my daughter Paige at the Retro City event. But as to writers, I've got people all over the country. I've got people who were involved in things back in the day, and other people that are just like me that are fans of everything that's out there. So I mean, we've got writers. Let's see, I've got a couple in Chicago. I've got one in New Jersey. I've got one. Where is he at? Up in Canada somewhere. I've got a couple people I'm talking to from Australia that are getting involved in it. Really, with the international community that is retro gamers, it's pretty much all over. And these people have found us, see that we're putting a serious product together, not just a blog, with just one person's ramblings. We're trying to put together a serious retro gaming magazine, similar to what you guys have over in the UK, being a Retro Gamer. We'd like to, have a magazine as cool as what they put together, but here in the US.
That one is actually pretty nice, yeah. But I want to jump on the Drac saying this is kind of new for him, and I think there is an element of, if you go back 10 years or more, these things were small and kind of underground and local. Now this is something that's blossomed in the last, 5, 6, 8 years, as nerddom has kind of also blossomed a little bit. People are admitting that they want to go back and stand in the more pop quarters into a machine, or they want to have old Nintendos, old Segas, all those classical devices, either the originals or these new minis that are being put out. It's becoming hip, liking the old games again.
Exactly. I mean, maybe it's a little bit of Big Bang Theory kind of, the nerds are cool again or something. I don't know. I mean, but yeah, those shows have really blossomed. We're riding that wave. I mean, the Nintendo Mini and the Sega Mini and the PlayStation Mini and the VCR Mini or whatever all the ones are coming out with, are really pulling this back. Because I think these people that sold us our game machines back in the 80s are realizing that we have income, and we're enjoying this stuff. We're reliving our past, and Drac's going to come up and join us up there at the event, and he's going to see that this thing is just massive. The SoCal ones are great. There's a fantastic one in Portland, the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. There's a Midwest Gaming Classic. There's some other stuff, there's some cool stuff in Texas, Austin, Texas. Classic Game Fest has an awesome event with a couple thousand people showing up, and there's literally probably, what would it be? Probably 300 or 400 of us that go to almost all of these, that just travel to a ton of them, that are either speakers at these events or exhibitors. And we have a family reunion about once a month or so at some of these shows.
I'll just jump in and say, if you're like me over in Europe, events like Gamescom sounds like they're only for AAA games and only for all the big fancy new stuff. But you can often find a hall off to the side, or in the case of Gamescom, upstairs in one of the halls, where you'll find retro gaming groups, clubs, people who will help you find that weird old computer that you had 20, 30, 40 years ago. Consoles, anything, or the spare parts, or the games, or whatever it is you need to get your old machine playing again and you playing on them. So it is really spreading out, and it is to be found. I'm not going to say every gaming convention, but even the biggest one are starting to wake up that they need to have this as well.
Well, for instance, the biggest of the game conventions, E3, has a retro kind of area. The people from the Frisco Museum have a neat event out there. I mean, I was just sitting down on a couch, just sitting talking with David Crane from Pitfall fame, and running into Eugene Jarvis walking around the Midwest Gaming Classic. I mean, he's known for Robotron, Defender, and a ton of other games, and you could just sit and talk with these guys. Some people have moved out of the industry and they wander back in, and some of them, are still in the industry. They're having a blast with it, and they enjoy their job, so why not keep doing it?
Oh, definitely. And it is fun because I was reading a few interviews, last year, the year before that, of people saying, well, I used to do this 70s, 80s, early 90s even. Then they left the industry. They went and got a normal job, and then suddenly realized, wait, that thing is still alive. And they come back and they do, talking events, guest events. It's awesome, and just seeing them enjoy being able to relive that past and coming back into the industry is really, it's a joy to behold, in my opinion.
I'm thoroughly enjoying it, just being able to talk with these people. Meet Scott Adams from the Adventure series of games. Ran into him at a Orlando event. Just sat and talked with the guy, and he told me about today, and he's coming back and doing stuff. These people are really enjoying it. So what I've been doing is really a labor of love, and it's a blast. It really is. But what it comes down to is we have a website with a ton of content on it. We have a digital magazine that's available free that you can check out. And then also, if you want to, the way I'm paying the bills is we have some advertising in the magazine, but we also have subscriptions to the magazine for $30 a year. You can get a magazine in your mailbox once every 2 months.
So you're taking a bit of risk there. I mean, print magazines?
Yeah, well, remember, these are the people that like to collect cartridges. So, I mean, if they want to do that, we only have about 1,000 paid subscribers to it, but and then there's about 15,000 that read it digitally. So, it depends on what they want to do. If they want to invest in being able to have a piece of paper that they can sit and read and collect, some of these guys order 2 copies of the magazine, one to collect and one to read. We're definitely going to take care of them.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's something that kind of brings us back, because I love getting like Amiga format or whatever back in that would be early 90s, and just flipping through those. There's part of me wants, literally your magazine physically in my hand and flipping through it as opposed to reading it on the screen. Might be age, I don't know, but there's something about that tactile thing, that physical feedback.
So tell me, I'm not as familiar with you guys as I really should be. I mean, I can give you my story on games, but at the same time, I want to understand what perspective are both you guys coming from? Let me ask this straight out. When were the two of you born? What was your first game console? And then I'll tell you the same thing about me.
Okay, so I'm, a year old in Drac, late 70s, and my first game console, as I said, goes back to literally the first generation. It doesn't even have a name. That's the absurd part. You can't find it, but there's a UK one that's identical. Imagine a little machine with paddles with a little wheel on it and a button. No stick for controlling. And then, of course, a light gun in the box. And then 8 built-in games with a little switch you move up and down to choose which one you wanted. There was Pong, and there was the one with a little white dot that you have to shoot on the screen.
It sounds like a knockoff of the Odyssey that we had over here. The video tech. Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. But yeah, for me it was
from about 76.
Yeah, for me it was the Intellivision. That was my first console, and then I went back and got the Atari. So I'm talking 1979 with what I enjoyed playing my first games with. And the cool thing is, I got to, a couple years ago, before I started the magazine, I got to meet some of the original developers of the Intellivision. And now there's a new Intellivision coming out. Someone new bought all the rights to the Intellivision series, so there'll be a new Intellivision with family-friendly games coming out, I think, late next year.
This is why I should pause and give Drac his input, because I think he went a little bit different than the rest of us.
Well, how I got it started in all this is in a way kind of a cool story. When I was a kid living back in Pennsylvania, I actually won an Atari system out of a Captain Crunch box, and if that hadn't happened, it would have been one of those folks that probably thought nobody ever wins those things. But that was my first console was an Atari, and that probably would have been the early '80s. Like really early 80s. I want to say probably like 80, 83, 84 time frame probably. And from that, we had a Commodore. I think it was a Commodore 64 at one point. I ended up, when I was about 10 or 11 years old, getting a job to buy my own Nintendo Entertainment System, because my parents couldn't afford to buy one. My dad told me if I wanted one, I had to go get a job. So got a paper route and worked it long enough to afford the Nintendo and the games I wanted before I quit it. But yeah, eventually over the years, I've kind of evolved more into PC gaming than console, just because I spend most of my time working on computers anyway.
Yeah, but for me, it was an Apple II was my first computer, playing Ultima and Bard's Tale and Might and Magic, and heck, now I've been trading emails back and forth with Lord British. We're hoping to be doing something more with him. I mean, some of these people, like I said, are still in the industry and still appreciate everything that's out there.
And that's got to be so cool, and to be able to like talk to them about how much things have changed, and making games from back then to now. And you mentioned Bard's Tale. I think was it the first one of that? I can't remember which one of the ones I played. Man, I had a list of dead characters like a mile long.
Yeah, I spoke with Michael. I draw a blank on the guy's last name. That did the original Bard's Tale, and now they're reinventing Bard's Tale. There's a new one out that came out on Kickstarter, and has, I think, just released in the last couple of months. So I mean, they're still giving homage to the old school properties. I just don't like when they take a name of something and then try to totally make something new out of it.
Oh, that pissed me off with Giana Sisters. Which, come to think of it, you two wouldn't know because it never made it to the US. Sega got that one killed. But that was a good little game. It's a complete Mario ripoff, admittedly, made in Germany. Giana Sisters. And somebody took the name a few years back and made a new one that in no way resembles the old one. Just the name and the fact that there are girls in it. That's it. It's going, that's a bit too cheap. But Drac, I'm glad that you say that you had a Commodore 64. That's where I got into the first computers. Away from console and into computing.
I'm trying to buy myself an Apple IIc. That was my first computer affordably, because I went and bought one of these things from I don't remember, from Korea or whatever, that has a adapter that goes on the back of it that I can run all my games off of a virtual hard drive. I mean, there's all kinds of cool stuff out there that these people are making.
So there I'm slightly curious, mostly because for me, the thing where I really fell in love with computers ultimately was the Commodore Amigas. And you can buy modern PCBs, printed circuit boards, for them, because there were technical issues, particularly with certain models, batteries, electrolytes, etc., would leak on and simply kill the motherboard. So you can buy complete parts that are new, modern, and just move all the old parts over to them, all the old chips that were socketed, everything, and basically have a more or less brand new old computer. Is that also an option with the Apple IIs and stuff?
I'm not sure some of that stuff is floating around on things, but there's people that bought out, probably not in the Apple area, because Apple really continued on to what it was, to what it is nowadays. But for instance, in the Atari world, there's a guy that bought out the warehouses of old Atari stuff when they got out of things. It became just a licensing company. So I mean, you can buy original 7800 motherboards, you can buy chips, you can buy all that kind of stuff from different places, and that's some of the stuff that we're working on hunting down for the magazine, getting out there. I mean, people find out about this kind of stuff, and then it's amazing what's on the internet, but sometimes you just can't find it. And there's chat groups, there's all kinds of groups that are out there that are talking about this.
Yeah, because I find that on the Amiga side, that if you want any of this stuff, you need to know people, even online, because they're just too well hidden. But these groups, they go out, there's one is making a complete, I think it's an Amiga 500 as a new board. It doesn't have any of the original electronics. It's made from scratch and using modern components, but it is fully A500 compatible. But you can't find it anywhere unless you find these chat groups, etc. So,
there's a group doing that with the ColecoVision, making a modernized FPGA version of the ColecoVision, and there's people out there licensing all this different stuff there. I mean, there's excitement in the community, and where I found out about most of these things is through my connection with the magazine, and then at all these shows. I mean, really got to get to them. I'm hoping to come over to the UK. There's a couple retro-based shows over there that I want to get to, and then maybe the two of us can get together there.
Hey, I'm not that far from the UK, so yeah, it's a train ride for me. So, well, then again, all of Europe is a train ride.
So I guess that to me kind of brings up an interesting question then, is where do you guys come up with the ideas for the topics of the articles? And then how do you go about researching all that stuff, and how much of it is online and how much of it is, building a network of contacts to reach out to maybe over the phone to get more info?
Well, I mean, I don't do a lot of that of the actual writing myself. I'll do some of it and everything. I'm more the business guy, the guy in the in the background, the Wizard of Oz in the background with stuff. I've got these writers that have connections and will just try reaching out to people. I mean, I had someone reaching out and writing a whole big piece on Battlezone, and he went back and found the original programmers, and some of them want to talk about this kind of stuff. So I mean, it's just deep diving on Facebook and trying to find somebody and reaching through to them. For instance, I'm still trying to get through to Warren Robinette, and he supposedly is working on a book. I mean, he's the guy that made Atari Adventure that the Ready Player One movie was all based off of, or had a underlying feature of. I'm trying to get through to him, but I mean, it's just digging and digging. We want to be beyond just the surface level of stuff. For instance, we have a 5-page story on the supercharger for the Atari 2600. That was a device that you plugged in, quadrupled or 50 times the RAM, and then you would load stuff off of a cassette tape and really jacked up the power on the Atari 2600. And one of my guys wrote a great piece on it that I finally found room in the magazine to do. I mean, we want detail. We don't just want what people can look up on Wikipedia on their own. That's why people are paying us to curate the content and get them something that has a little bit more value to it.
And yeah, I saw some perusing through. I saw a few interesting articles. Some of the stuff talking about different colors of cartridges and why some of them were different. There was another one that was mentioning. I guess it was. I don't know. A collector probably would notice right away, but maybe most of us might not have noticed right off. Was that on some of the? I think it was the original Mario cartridges or something. The artwork had hit the wrong color on there for him instead of the red parts of his outfit. I think it was blue.
Yeah, and there's people that'll collect that stuff and will pay thousands of dollars to be the one of only 3 people in the country to have it. I'm not that far on things. I'm into my Atari 2600 collection. I've got about 400 of the cartridges, but I'm not going to buy a $300 game that stinks. If I want to, I could play the ROM on my little handheld or something. I'm enjoying digging through buckets of games in every one of these things and trying to find a couple games I don't have and pay $5 or $10 for them.
That's so cool. Plus, I think that's kind of a neat thing to be able to take and like for instance, I could take to my kid and say, hey, this is a console. This is one of the first consoles I got to play when I was growing up, and show her some of the games.
Yeah, and the cool thing is, I mean, there's companies like Hyperkin that are making consoles, HDMI-based consoles. I mean, up converting Atari 2600 games onto a 42-inch, LCD screen. Make those blocks even more crisp and big.
Yeah, I've seen some of the stuff with the craze with like the little, what is it, the NES and the Super NES systems that were coming out that had a bunch of games built in.
Yeah, there's ones that are built in, but I mean, the Hyperkin units are the ones from Retrobit actually take the original cartridges right inside of them and play off of that stuff, and you get even better games off that. So that's, for instance, some of our advertisers that are doing stuff with us and that I'm trying to get going on things. So yeah, again, it's just modernizing the old games that we played. We have an absolute blast with them.
So a question for me, one of the answers would be, if people want to learn about this, go to the conventions. If people want to play those old games, go out and find them. But for anybody who's sitting in a place where they can't get to these conventions, what would you say, where should one start looking? Besides, of course, oldschoolgamermagazine.com or oldschoolgamer.com.
Starting with us is a good spot. I mean, I've done a lot of searches and found some really cool podcasts, video channels on YouTube. There's some neat stuff with it. But yeah, I mean, if you were to subscribe to our digital version of the magazine, you'll get emails with stuff of people that are involved with us on things that we can get things going. And get the word out about stuff. If, for instance, you're someone listening that has developed something and you're listening to the Bamsters podcast, get a hold of us. Email me at rb at oldschoolgamer.com and tell us about it. We'd love to get the word out about anything cool in the retro gaming arena for you.
Definitely. I mean, this is one of those things that it's always something I come back to. It's always something I want to do more of, but retro gaming just ends up taking so much time. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that I dig myself into a hole. Like suddenly I've read up all the specs on a Sorrow port. Don't ask why. But it's a risky thing to get into.
Yeah, it can eat up stuff, but it's a fun hobby. If you don't collect the actual arcade machines, which a bunch of my friends do, you can all keep it pretty small. But yeah, you can definitely kill some time doing this kind of stuff. I mean, this morning out of my love for everything. I was sitting here spending 2 hours working on this magazine that in the end I'm breaking even on, which is good enough for me because I'm really enjoying the time they put in. I get to talk to people like yourselves. I get to enjoy the past and bring it back for everybody, and I love doing that.
So a slightly different direction. Games are still being made for these platforms. You can actually find companies that publish games for 8 and 16-bit platforms. Where do you sit with those?
Yeah, I mean, Atari Age, they probably have released, I don't know, 50 or 60 games for the 2600, stuff for the Jaguar. You can go to Good Deal Games. They've got all kinds of games. Like, here's an example one. The Atari 7800 had a game called Impossible Mission. And literally the way they programmed it on the US version, the NTSC version, not the PAL version, it was impossible. You could not finish it, okay? But a friend of mine, Michael, had some buddies program it up and fix the little bug that was in it, made it so it was a possible mission. And now you can buy the 7800 cartridge, a possible mission, which is Impossible Mission fixed. But yeah, there's tons of different games out there. There's a group making a thing called the NES Maker that is a development kit for your computer that you can develop NES games. So there's going to be hundreds upon hundreds of games coming out on these old school platforms in cartridges even.
Okay, the cartridge part I'm kind of impressed with because I know on the C64 they do it as a tape or tape emulation. So you pretty much need either an old tape player connected to a computer and then write down to the tape and then take that over to the PlayStation, or you need an emulator to play it. I think they have the same with the Amigas pretty much.
Yeah, if the market were to kick up for C64, didn't the C64 also take some cartridges too?
It does, yes. There's a cartridge.
There'd be people making cartridges for it. I mean, this NES Maker that I heard about a year ago literally comes with a USB device that allows you to flash chips, and then you can put it in the cartridge. You buy a couple blank cartridges from them, and then if you want to do a big distribution of it, you can deal with a whole other thing. But you can literally make a couple copies of a cartridge on the fly at home.
Nice. I remember stories back then from people getting kids to make their own cartridges so they could put games or whatever, literally any of their own software. So yeah, I could imagine some of that still being available even.
As you can tell, I get a little bit excited about this kind of stuff.
Trust me, I'm trying to hold back because there's too many memories from 80s and just sat in front of either C64 or an A500, just nerding out. Like fun little things. Drac will tell me how awesome a PC is, and then I can tell him stories about how the Zorro port that I mentioned earlier in an Amiga is actually better than the PCI port in a PC, and it's faster.
The Amiga was a fantastic computer that never really took past the the fanatic level of people, because there's so many other really quick, cheap things out there. They're really buying the cheap stuff in comparison.
Over by you, yes. Over here, it really was. There were 2, 3, 4 options, and the one that really was the better options through and through, even with price and everything, was the Amiga. But it never got past the idea that it was a gaming machine. Like, you would have people say, "Oh, you want to do that? Yeah, I can do that on a Amiga 2000 or 3000, or you can get a PC that costs 4 times as much." Okay, they'll buy the PC because it has the veneer of business. Meanwhile, Video Toaster, NewTek, etc., all that ran on Amigas for reasons. NASA bought old Amigas and sent to space for reasons. So it was a fantastic machine, but it just, as said over here, had the wrong image.
Yeah, I think the same thing was with the Atari ST, which in some form was very similar to the Amiga, which was still popular here. But I mean, there's people who use those 10 and 15 years later for doing audio and video work because they just built in the right stuff. It wasn't just cheap little $2 audio cards like they put in all those PCs.
Yeah, the fun ones were purely by stupidity or dumb luck. I don't know. Commodore, the Amiga people before they even joined Commodore, had built it so the timing inside of it was based on video signals through and through. Weird thing today, I would argue, but back then I guess it made sense. So gen locking was dead easy on it. And for people who don't know, gen locking was where basically think all those old videotape overlays of text scrolling over your home videos, think that for gen locking. Blackburst if you are in the business industry today, but sorry, nerding.
We're having a blast though. It's a Saturday morning here in Iowa, and I'm sitting here talking with geeky stuff with a guy in California and a guy. Where do you say you are over in Europe?
Right now I'm in Brussels, Belgium.
This is the world we live in nowadays. I mean, for me, it started. If you want to go at this retro arena, it started me with CompuServe in about 1985. Connecting up with people all over the world, and then on to college and news groups and stuff. And now look at this. Look at all that we can do nowadays.
I think by 92, 93, we were using BBSs and modems because internet, CompuServe and everything that became the internet eventually. That just wasn't available for us.
Yeah,
dialing up to Europe being a lot smaller, also a lot of small countries. We didn't have long distance, short distance phone numbers and rates. We had what does it cost to call inside your country? What does international rates cost? So dialing up to Italy and going, hi, let's exchange some discussions about these things.
I remember helping to run a software depository, we'll nicely call it, where people could trade computer software over a 14.4 and 28.8 modems when I was in college. That was the way to do it.
Oh, yeah, and they were so slow because we couldn't get ours to train at 28.8.
Now you're reminding me of back when I used to play MUDs on, back in college days, all text-based, like RPG dungeon type stuff.
On a telnet connection.
Yep.
Yeah, those were the days, weren't they, where you would sit and type N, enter, N, enter, N, enter, E, enter, just to move north, 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 east, east.
Yeah, but see, the good thing about those games was before that, my parents were having a real hard time trying to convince me that I needed to work on my typing skills. And once I started playing those, and I'd be handling like 2 or 3 conversations while I was navigating through the world and fighting off creatures, my typing speed shot up pretty quick.
I can imagine, definitely. Sorry, Ryan, we went a weird way.
Oh, I'm fine. I'm just having a blast sitting back here chuckling. So, I mean, really, in the end, my whole goal is getting out the word about Old School Gamer Magazine and everything that we're connected with. If any of you go to oldschoolgamer.com/subscribe, you can put in your email address. The digital version is totally free for people, and we just wanted to check it out. If you really like it and want to throw us $30 a year, for a print subscription mailed to you, we'd love that too. But otherwise, just help us ride the wave.
And when you guys are talking a little about getting a hold of folks, connecting to folks all over the world and whatnot, what kind of comments have you heard from like the folks that read the magazine or purchase the magazine?
I don't know how to describe it. Everything from thanks to why don't you publish this every month? It's like, yeah, I'd love to, but it's a little bit expensive to do this on this level. To can you go do more coverage on the MSX? Can you go do more coverage on the Sinclair? We haven't seen anything on the TI 99 4A in a while. How about the Channel F? It's like, yes, we're trying to get all kinds of different stuff. And that's where our website kind of fills in on things, that we put a lot more content on the website that we can't fit in the magazine.
Well, I'll give you some coverage on the Sinclair. The keyboard was annoying as hell. I know people love it, but ew.
Is that the little one that was about the size of a Discman black with kind of a membrane keyboard?
Membrane rubber-based keyboard, yeah. People loved it. I don't know why, but I couldn't stand it.
There was a guy up until the mid-90s, maybe even late 90s, running a 1200 baud BBS off of one of those in Iowa.
Damn. Well, I did hear, was it a school over in the US was running an Amiga 500 for the HVAC up until a couple of years ago, and it broke down. Good luck getting parts.
They probably went to eBay for parts if they could.
They had. They mentioned one admin had just kind of bought old ones. Actually, I think it was an A2000. So they bought parts so they could keep it alive, because that was still cheaper than modernizing the HVAC. So it ran the HVAC for a school. Kind of scary. And as I mentioned, I know NASA sent up a few, literally a few Amigas for things in space. I don't recall precisely what components, but part of it is the chips were big enough that they didn't need to be rad hardened, and it was for near-Earth missions, so you don't get that much radiation. So they could survive in space, but also simply because they just kept on ticking.
Well, they built things better back in the day. There's no doubt about it.
I don't know if better, but because there's a reason why they were slow. We're talking an A500 ran at 4.7. I have to say 4.7 something.
Yeah, it must be more. Yeah, it must be more efficient, I think, is the way it works.
Yeah. But Drac earlier made me think. I was reading an article about, because we're up in a certain age and we have kids. Mine's running around here now. Somebody went back and found all the games he had played in his childhood, and then basically sat his 7-8-year-old kid down and had her play. So she started with 8-bits, and then when she gotten through several 8-bit games, 16-bit, and then 32-bit. So she got that transition through gaming. She didn't just go, oh, look how pretty it is now, and then pick up an 8-bit game and say, I don't want to play this because it's ugly.
Yeah, I wish I had.
I'll jump in there. Sorry about that. We're stepping on each other a little bit, but you know what makes me appreciate stuff on games is what they could do back in 4 and 8K and 2 megahertz. No, we're not talking 2 gigahertz, son. We're talking 2 megahertz. We're not talking 4 megs of RAM. We're talking 4K. I mean, appreciation for what those guys could do back then, and we thought it was awesome. Nowadays, yeah, it's a different story.
Yeah, I wish I had thought to do that with my kiddo so that she would have a similar appreciation for how things have evolved.
I'd say somebody who's formally trained as a developer, we should do that in schools. We should make people program something that runs, megahertz, and you get a few kilobytes of RAM. Now do things.
Well, and kids nowadays will never know the challenge of trying to get the little turtle on the screen to draw pictures. I don't think they teach that anymore.
Oh, I remember that in high school now. Thank you for the memory, boss.
Good old COBOL and, turtle commands. COBOL was invented in Copenhagen. Sorry. But there was something weird, like things developers don't really need to know unless they're really nerdy hackers. Back then, we would literally, in order to change color on a screen, when you ran out of registers for color, you ran out of literally color space because you only had 8 or 16 or 32 if you were on a good machine. Colors. So telling, for example, again on Amiga, the copper, the thing that controlled the output to the screen, to give an instruction to the light cannon inside the monitor, remember? Not flat screens. Good old electron beam based stuff. To change so that you could, if you got the timing right, you could change the background color on the screen without using color space, just by telling the copper to control it a little bit differently. So, weird little tricks telling a chip that isn't meant to do this stuff, to do things that nobody thought of. The fun we had programming that back then.
Well, I'm going to shift it back to some of the stuff on the website real quick, because there was one other thing that I did want to ask about. I noticed that some of the articles that you have there, it's the video game trading card spotlight. Can you talk a little bit more about what exactly that? It looks like it's different icons from the industry, old school industry and whatnot.
Well, we hooked up with a gentleman named Walter Day. If you guys aren't familiar with him, back in 1980 or something, early 80s, he was the first person to keep track of high scores on video games, first on arcade games and then on console games. And he was actually based out of Fairfield in Ottumwa, Iowa, so about an hour and a half away from me. And he started a trading card series of legends in the industry that he got to know, that he wanted just to chronicle and get these people's stories out there. He started that, I believe, about 5 years ago. So when we hooked up with him, we started publishing some of his cards both in the magazine in some form, and then with this online series, just for extra content so people know the past history of what's all out there.
So that's another good way to get some info on some of the guys that used to play the games or even make the games as well, or? Yeah,
I mean, he's there. It is. I assume we'll be able to edit that kind of stuff out. Okay, good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he has covered people that made the games. For instance, at the latest Iowa event, he brought out Warren Davis and David Crane. Warren Davis, known for Qbert, also did the whole digitizing system for Mortal Kombat, NBA Jam, and a bunch of those games. And then we talked with David Crane earlier with Pitfall and a bunch of other stuff. He brought them out. He immortalized them in a trading card series, sort of like how we used to get excited about baseball cards back when we were kids. And people can collect those cards, and we give them away all the time on things. And it's just kind of a fun thing that Walter does, so I wanted to support what he was doing.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't know, are you guys familiar with Walter Day?
Doesn't ring me a bell.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure if I was or not.
Well, I mean, look him up, take a look at stuff. He does some stuff for us, but he did start what was called Twin Galaxies back then. Also, he started the Twin Galaxies arcade and high score system. And it was also, if you remember the movie Wreck-It Ralph, he's also immortalized in Wreck-It Ralph as the arcade owner. The guy wearing the referee shirt in there is actually a callback to Walter Day, a good friend of mine.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I do remember Wreck-It Ralph. I haven't seen the second one yet, but
And the second one's okay, not as good as the first one. There's still good callback jokes to our era of things, and the way they kind of explain the internet works is kind of cool. So definitely worth seeing for any video game junkie.
I did just look him up, and he apparently does ragtime piano. I kind of like that.
He's lived a couple lives, no doubt about it. We're working on an autobiography of him, and you're actually the first person I've mentioned that to.
oh, that's cool.
Sorry, now I'm on Wikipedia. I'm going to close Wikipedia because it never ends well. And you're reminding me, Drac, I need to also watch Wreck-It Ralph 2. But I'm guessing things like, what was that other movie? Pixels? Was that the one that was horrible?
Oh, yeah, that was the one that had Peter Dinklage in it that I think was supposed to be kind of a take on Billy Mitchell somehow.
Yeah, it was, and believe me, Billy wasn't too thrilled about it, but it was fun. I mean, if you want to see a little bit more about all of Billy Mitchell, Walter Day, that kind of stuff, The King of Kong is a great movie to see. That talks a lot about that kind of stuff, also.
That touches a little bit, particularly that movie. The whole the U.S. had these World Cups in various games. I never saw anything outside of the U.S. with that. I know they also came into the U.K. a little bit. I found out later on, but back in the day, no, we were told, oh yeah, there was a World Cup. It was in the U.S. It only had Americans. Done. Why would I have a World Cup in arcade games just in one place? But as you say, nothing negative. It was a curiosity back then.
It's just like how the World Series is only U.S. and one Canadian team anymore. But at the same time, that's the way it was back then. But now there's all these international championships of Tetris and all kinds of stuff out there.
Oh yeah, it's changed. Now it is very much international. People are flying around. I mean, esports are doing it as well. It's really becoming a thing. It was fun back then. And yeah, there are individual names that are coming up now in popular culture, but the games they are playing now and the teams that's $1 million and $1 billion business now.
When you mentioned Tetris, and that made me think about some of the different phone apps and stuff, and the way that they've been evolving over the years. And I wonder how much of the early apps, like games and stuff on phones, have maybe led to folks being maybe becoming interested in some of the old school games, because some of that early stuff was in some ways similar to some of the old games that we used to play on console back in the day.
Yeah, I would think that the world of casual gaming, of people just playing games that way. When the three of us used to play games back in the day, we could play a game for 5 or 10 minutes and get an enjoyable game out of it. Nowadays, people have to play for hours to really get into the game, and casual gaming kind of brought that vibe back to people, that you can enjoy playing a game for just 5 or 10 minutes.
I think Drag, if I may, I think part of what also came up is I can get an emulator on my phone. I can play those old games, at least some of them, on my phone. I can be in a bus. I can get 5 minutes in on some game. I can even save it, which I couldn't do back then. And then next day when I'm on the bus, I get another 5 minutes in. I think that's really changed how gaming also works.
Man, what I wouldn't have given for a save feature back then.
Oh yeah. I'm playing through, earlier this year I was playing through Rick Dangerous. Just Rick Dangerous 2, and just having that save feature, yes, please.
On just another note, I mean, yeah, we all wanted the save features back in the day, but now there's actual features on a lot of these emulators, and even on some of the other consoles. If I remember correctly, the Atari, what's called Retron 77, that Hyperkin put out that takes an HDMI up converts cartridges, you can now do save states. So they're making so we can play like we wanted to back when Mom would call us to dinner and say, "Mom, just 5 more minutes on my game, please." And Mom would come in and turn off the TV.
Yeah. You let it just run like from one day to another without telling anybody.
But Mom would always switch it off. Why are they leaving this thing on? Oh, when they went to school.
Yeah. Oh, Mom.
I still get that sometimes from my wife when she's calling me for dinner.
Yeah, I just got that yesterday. Doing a raid and the wife calls me, it's food time. Aww. Anyways, Ryan, it's been awesome. Apologies. We could probably keep this going for a while, but kind of have to stop.
Well, Drac, I look forward to seeing you soon, and you can come back and give a bit of an update on the show and what some of these cons are like, and we'll see if we get more of you guys to show up for them.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like it's going to be a blast, so I'm looking forward to going. But I don't know if G's trying to avoid it or whatnot. But we do have one other question we like to ask each one of our guests before we let them get out the door. And
I'm scared now.
this is more of just kind of a fun question, nothing to do specifically with gaming. But what kind of bacon do you like, if you like bacon? And what kind of beverage, be it beer, cider, or other beverage, would you pair with said bacon?
Okay, bacon in Iowa is the best way. We're the biggest producer of pork in the entire country. So I like big, thick cut bacon, a little, about half meaty, half fatty. And for a drink with that, I would have a Dr. Pepper on ice, chilling out.
I think we just found where Bam will want to move to if he ever moves to the U.S.
I have to visit Iowa now.
We'll find a reason for you to come by, or I'll just ship you some bacon. I don't know how we could get it froze all the way over there, but Iowa bacon is absolutely fantastic.
Well, I should say that I'm from Denmark, and over here it's always Danish bacon, so you got a bit of competition, mate.
Well, We'll trade back and forth. No problem. Let's see what we can do. And we have a big thing called the Bacon Festival here in Des Moines every summer. You can come to that. It's a combination trials of different types of bacon and microbrews. So if you're into microbrews, this could be the way to get you to Iowa.
Yeah, my wife and I went to a bacon fest about 2 years ago now, I think, that here in San Diego. And yeah, it was every other tent was bacon, and the other tents were beer, and so it was just bacon, beer, bacon, beer, bacon, beer. Oh man! After about 3.5 hours, I couldn't do any more. But it was a great 3.5 hours.
Also,
well,
but unhealthy.
Yeah. But since you're going to be out here on the West Coast, I'll have to look and see. I don't know if there's a Slater's up in LA or not. We'll have to look and see if there's one up in the area. But at least down here in San Diego, if you'll be down in this area, there's a place called Slater's 50/50. And the 50/50 part of the name comes from the hamburger that they mix with bacon meat before they cook it. So it's all ground up with, hamburger and bacon, and then they make it into a patty. They've got a lot of really great options.
Wow.
Some of my favorites are like the peanut butter and jelly burger, which might sound strange, but it is just really good. Peanut butter goes really good with bacon.
Do these Slaters get out of San Diego? Do they have them like up in LA? Then maybe we could go there when you're up in my direction?
I'll look it up and see if there's one up in the LA area. I'll have to check on that.
Otherwise, when I'm in LA and I want a good cheeseburger, I'll go to In-N-Out, but this sounds even better.
That's actually my only complaint with In-N-Out is that they don't have bacon on their menu.
Just have to bring your own.
That's a good point.
Well, anyways, Ryan has said it's been awesome. I'm liking the magazine. I've been also chewing through some of the articles. There's some pretty good ones. I like the writing. I like overall what the topics you're getting into, because it's reminding me of some of the things that I was doing, just playing the games and reading everything you could find in magazines back then. And I am definitely for it. Anybody sitting out there, check out the digital version, but remember there's a physical one as well. The digital one is free, but for the love of God, give me something tactile, give me something physical to browse through. Then I'll crawl under my blanket.
We do have apps, by the way, for both Google and Apple that have access to all of our magazines and a bunch of other retro magazines that have been around the last 10 or 12 years. We got the rights to have copies of those in there. So if you want to keep your reading going, install those apps from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store, and you can spend a ton of time cuddling with your blankie reading about the past.
Well, and one of the really cool things I noticed on there is that while there's definitely the articles that reach back into some feels from back in the days and, touch on some nostalgia, there's also a ton more articles about things that I never even had a clue about that were going on, either in the industry or with, certain games. So that's pretty cool too. There's a lot of information about just all kinds of things that have gone on with a lot of these retro titles.
And I think one thing we need to make sure that we mention, people check out the conventions around you, because all of this has been blowing up for a while now, and there's just so many awesome things. Whether you go to the big conventions that look like they're for AAAs or to the dedicated conventions, you can usually find weird things from your own childhood that's just gonna blow you away.